Pedro Acosta was unflinchingly loyal to KTM throughout the worst of its financial crisis, but now its future seems sorted. There's been a bit of a change in his tone. Simon, Acosta's been, I don't want to say moody, that's too flippant, but there's definitely been a lot more angst from Pedro after almost every MotoGP race recently, regardless of the results, because KTM's had some good ones and some bad ones. So what is going on with Pedro?
I'm not entirely sure that moody's the wrong word, Matt. I think it kind of describes his mentality very well. There's been kind of teenage angst about the state of things at KTM from Acosta recently, where he's just obviously visibly frustrated with the situation, with the way that things have been working. Weirdly, kind of as things have gone on and as the company has pulled itself out of financial difficulties and started to look a bit more stable and secure again, it's almost like it's allowed the riders to be a bit more confident in expressing some of the criticisms that they didn't want to say while things were still bad. And especially with regards to kind of development and new parts coming in the pipeline, we've started to get a little bit more of a feeling that things haven't been great over this winter period and into the start of the season. KTM are still doing the thing that they've done all the way along to kind of reassure their riders, which is every few months they ship all of them to Austria and bring them into the race department and say, look how much new stuff there is for you guys. Look how great everything's going to be. And that kind of placates Acosta for a few weeks until he starts getting moody and angsty again that he's not running at the front. But, you know, there is obvious discontent there right now. More from him than from anyone else, but there is discontent.
The thing I don't get about it, though, is what he's looking to achieve at the moment, because any suggestion that he could be shipped out of KTM as early as the end of this season seems to have gone very quiet for now. So he's, I'm going to say it again, he's kicking off, maybe too strong, at the team, knowing he's there for a good 18 months yet. Is this like an early move to make sure he gets a 2027 deal with someone who's a bit more stable? At least a bit more predictably stable. We know that KTM has its new investment from Bajaj, but we don't know exactly what shape that's going to be in terms of how big is the MotoGP commitment. You know, what the future looks like could still be pretty different to the present for KTM. So is this a kind of an early flirtation with other teams, or is there actually still a chance that someone could swoop in for him for 2026?
I mean, the last time we saw a rider kind of being this petulant and this misbehaved with their team in regards of what they said, Fabio Quartararo then went and signed another 2-year deal with Yamaha. So it could be that this is just a way to put pressure on the team to try and ensure that everything that he's been promised does come for the next 18 months, because realistically, I don't see any way at all in which he's going to find a way out of this kind of this KTM contract for 2026. Not just because KTM probably have a fairly airtight deal with him. I would imagine that KTM have learned that you need to have fairly airtight deals with riders who are managed by Albert Valera after what he did to Jorge Martin's contract with KTM whenever he was originally coming to MotoGP. But also just because it doesn't look like there's really anywhere else for him to go.
Yeah, Valera having formed both for extracting Martin out of the KTM system to put into MotoGP on Ducati, and much more recently, Aprilia will not be the biggest fans of Valera right now, even as they try to keep Jorge Martin on side. Acosta is at least still lead KTM in the championship, not by, well, actually by quite a lot now over Maverick Vinales, because Vinales' little surge has tailed off rather. Enea Bastianini is the other, it's like second most grumpy rider in the KTM camp whenever you speak to him. His point score, equal with Brad Binder at the moment, makes his situation actually look better than it is, and his point score's not very good. So that says, you know, his mood after every race is pretty despondent about having any hope of getting on top of what the KTM offers him and making the KTM work for his riding style. Is that relationship doomed already? Is there any chance of Bastianini being extracted early from his KTM deal? What does the future hold for this one? Because to me, it doesn't seem like there's any way this is going to turn around from this current uncompetitive, miserable state.
I mean, for him, for Bastianini in particular, it sounds like he's just lost with the bike, that all of their problems is coming from the fact that he can't get this machine to work. And he's the one that's perhaps most anticipating the arrival of new stuff, of new parts, because he believes that fundamentally his problem with the machine is ergonomic, that, you know, he is quite a sensitive rider who needs a bike that fits him quite well, and that the KTM just doesn't fit him, and that there's been no money for new stuff to come to change that. And, we can't undersell the importance of this because, we always have the case study of Jorge Lorenzo at Ducati, who spent the first year of his time there in fairly similar states of despondency to what Bastianini is right now.
True.
Eventually got listened to, got a lot of new bits that moved him around where he sat in the bike, and suddenly he was winning races. I'm not saying that Bastianini is going to start winning races after the Red Bull Ring whenever all these new parts arrive, but I think that at least for him, there's a deadline where we find out if things are going to get better pretty quickly or not.
Jorge Lorenzo, of course, having got the bits he wanted and started winning, basically split with Ducati at Ducati's behest at the same time, virtually.
Also managed by Albert Valera at the time.
Oh, yeah. There's a theme. There's another change brewing at Bastianini's team, Tech 3, the KTM satellite, owned forever by Hervé Poncherel. But Poncherel's been making noises recently about potentially a big change there. And a man familiar to F1 fans as a long-time Haas team boss and familiar to the world from his many sweary appearances in Netflix's Drive to Survive, Guenther Steiner is involved in one of the potential investment groups coming into Tech 3. Simon, you had a chat with Hervé at the most recent MotoGP round to find out the situation.
I need now also to understand what's going to happen with KTM. We understand with the Bajaj money coming from India, the company is saved.
Yes.
But who are going to be the new bosses? Who is going to be the new decision maker? What the decision maker is going to decide regarding the politic of the company? Are they going to be doing racing like in the past, or select a few program only? If they select a few program only, is MotoGP going to be part of it? Are they going to commit with the new promoter for 27-31? I've been hearing very positive news about that. So I am confident, but until you have 100%, the information that is going to happen. So for the moment, there are discussions. Not so many things are happening. So there was the Martin, the Martin affair, let's call it like that. Now there is a Steiner Poncherel Tech 3. It's not an affair, interesting, So, but at the end of the day, I'm happy to be, to have people interested in Tech 3 because at the end of the day, the more you talk about Tech 3, the more Tech 3 is in between bracket popular. So, this is not a problem for me, but today, nothing has changed.
I mean, yeah, Guenther, from everything we've seen of him on TV, he seems like the sort of person that would be a very natural fit for Tech 3 and for your team. I think you're similar characters.
Honestly, as I told you, I haven't been spending too much time with him because he's a very busy man traveling from a place to another in between USA, UK, Italy. Now he wrote a book also.
Yeah, and he's doing a stage show in the UK.
Yeah, he is now there. So, but again, for the small amount of time we spent together, I think it seems to match quite well. And at the moment, I think we like each other,
We've invited Scott Mitchelman from the Race's F1 team to join us for this bit because he is a particularly well-qualified Guenther Steiner expert, having actually been slapped by him at some point during his F1 paddock career. Scott, even though a lot of our viewers are not necessarily F1 fans, I'm sure they're aware of Guenther Steiner from the memes, the Netflix appearances, and how he's kind of transcended F1 in character terms a little bit. Is that the real Guenther, or is that a bit of a cartoon caricature?
I think it is mostly the real Guenther. I think that what the character that you get from him on Drive to Survive, it is a character, but that's because that's kind of how he is. I think if anybody, quote unquote, normal met Steiner, they'd actually be quite shocked at how forthright he is. He's incredibly, incredibly blunt, but he's also kind of weirdly charismatic in the same way. And I think it's because those two traits are just inherently compatible. When someone is like that, yes, he's quite sweary, he's outspoken, he does speak before he thinks on occasion, but he's also first of all, he's incredibly intelligent. He's very, engineering background, incredibly experienced in motorsport, and also got a hugely successful set of work outside of Formula One, which is one of the reasons why he still lives in the States. He's got a business to run out there effectively. But he's also, on top of being, smart and honest, he's funny and quite down to earth as well. You can have a conversation, and your reference. I have been summoned to Steiner to have him basically do his job and give me a little bit of a Steiner version of a slap on the wrist, but I have also been semi-jokingly slapped in the face in Miami this year because I said to him, when he told me how busy he's been with his various media commitments and stuff, his life outside of F1, I suggested to him that he's now almost as busy as us, which got a light little rap round the face.
I mean, it's hard to sell that as anything other than F1's version of Hervé Poncharal. So the person that he's coming in to join, you know, I've been summoned for a slap in the wrist, I've had angry phone calls, and I've been kind of slapped around jokingly by Hervé and got some praise from him. So it sounds like quite similar characters, and that's kind of reflected in what Hervé has told us, because it sounds like the two of them have hit it off on a personal level. It can't be bad for MotoGP to have a character like that come in and be this kind of bigger than life figure, especially with Guenther Steiner's background, because MotoGP's problem has always been that we've struggled to sell these characters. We've struggled to kind of show them to the world. So to have someone come in who already has all that experience, who knows how to do the media thing from his time in Drive to Survive, I mean, it can't hurt anyone. It can't be anything but a positive for growing the reach of the sport, which at the end of the day is going to be Liberty Media's big focus over the next 5 years.
And it is probably worth just adding as well, just to stress, you know, Steiner is all of those things, but he's not a sideshow. You know, he's not someone that comes in and just undermines the seriousness or the integrity of what he's part of. And he'll go, if he does this, he'll go into MotoGP as someone who's eager to learn about the nuances of it. And just because he's someone not familiar with that world doesn't mean that he'll be there as that kind, just purely as a laughy, jokey, good for the cameras character. There is some substance to go with that as well.
We talk so much about that character, though, and like you say, Scott, there is a lot more to Steiner than just the sound bites. You've covered F1 during the time he was running Haas, and since he's left Haas and it's been under Ayao Komatsu instead. How's the team changed without Steiner? How does F1 kind of judge his era now?
Well, if you, based on what I just said previously, if you were going to be slightly uncharitable, you would say it's become a slightly more serious engineering-led organisation in terms of the way the race team kind of presents itself. But that does Steiner a little bit of a disservice, because I think the main difference now is that you don't have one person trying to be all things to all people at the very top of the team, which is kind of how Steiner was before. He was team principal. He was the most senior representative of the race team itself at the track, but he was also indirectly at different times, you know, CEO, CFO. He was the media representative and doing everything that you could probably imagine, that probably now in a modern F1 team you need 2 or 3 different people to do, which is why now you've got Ayao Komatsu's in as team principal, but the sort of more senior elements of the financial side, marketing side, that's been taken off Komatsu's hands, so he doesn't have to worry about that so much. And I think now that's given Haas a little bit more kind of specific direction in all of the key areas. There's a clear go-to person now for certain specific things who have the time to do those jobs properly, whereas before Steiner was the go-to person for everything, but you can't be the go-to person for everything. You don't have time, especially as he has other stuff going on based in the US. So from everything that I've read from what you've written about this, Simon, the role he would have if he came into MotoGP, I actually think would be pretty perfect for him where he is now, and would be perfect in terms of what he has to offer a MotoGP team, because he's kind of beyond that direct running of a race team. I don't think that necessarily plays to his biggest strengths, whereas I think a shareholder, owner, whatever he would be, actually does. Be at that absolute top level, use the fact that he has this kind of broader appeal now. He's got so many contacts as well in the wider motorsport world, and as I say, intelligent engineering background. He's really good at pulling various kind of strands together and leading something on a macro level. I don't think he's necessarily a details man in terms of the day-to-day operation of something, especially in MotoGP, a world that he doesn't know, but that's not what he's kind of being lined up to do or what he's interested in doing, so I think it could be the perfect match.
I mean, one of the big positives from what you've just said, Scott, that I take from that is that you can kind of be that person who's all things to all people in MotoGP when you're running a satellite team, when you don't have to worry about building the bikes and they arrive as a complete package. And we've kind of seen Hervé Poncharal does a bit of that role at Tech 3, where he's the guy that comes and speaks to the media, and he's the guy that's schmoozing the sponsors, because he doesn't have to be in the garage or in the engineering workshop in between races. So you've kind of sold me that he's a good fit for this project.
You can see more from Hervé Poncharal if you're part of the Race Members Club on Patreon as well. We've got a full 10-minute interview with him there that Simon did. So Simon, just to round off, is Hervé Poncharal happy at the moment? I couldn't really tell from that chat if he's frustrated with the KTM situation, if he's looking for a way out, or if this is a chance to kind of capitalise on Liberty coming in and kind of reshaping his team rather than exiting. Is he even going to stay with KTM if this does happen?
I mean, what happens with him in KTM, I think, or with Tech 3 in KTM, is probably something that's largely out of his hands, because that depends on what the shape of KTM looks like going forward, and on if any of the other manufacturers want to make an offer to him. But we know that, Dorna in particular are quite happy with each factory having as few satellite teams as possible, even though Ducati have been allowed to have as many as 3 in the past, but they don't want to go back to that. So they're not going to just happily allow Ducati to make an offer for Tech 3 and swoop in and push KTM back to 2 bikes in the grid. But, in the grand scheme of things for Hervé, I think he's at the age where he's kind of looking for an exit ramp. He's thinking about retirement. He's looking for a way out. And the general gist of the talk with him, the longer form interview we did, is that if that's going to happen, he wants to do it where he hands off to someone that's going to kind of continue this awesome little team that he's built and continue to do good things with it. So he's not going to shut up shop and walk away from MotoGP. He wants to hand this off. And he's quite fortunate at the minute that, all of this is happening at a time where realistically MotoGP grid spots are becoming more and more valuable because of the arrival of Liberty Media.